Desmond! Oh my goodness, are you okay? Bianca cried as she hurried to his bedside. Tears rolled down her cheeks and she gently grabbed his hand, holding it in both of hers. Her voice was shaking. Desmond opened his eyes and gave a faint, tired smile. He spoke slowly, as if it was hard to get the words out. I'm okay now, he whispered. Just a little hurt. He tried to move as if to sit up, but suddenly he winced and let out a weak groan. My legs, Desmond whispered in a frightened tone. I can't feel my legs. At these words, Bianca gasped and covered her mouth with one hand. Fear struck her heart. What do you mean you can't feel your legs? A warm breeze blew in from the Atlantic Ocean as the sun set over the coastal city. The sky was painted with orange and pink hues, reflecting on the calm water by the shore. In a grand mansion overlooking the lagoon, a wealthy young man named Desmond sat on the balcony. He gazed at the view of Lagos and took in the gentle waves, distant ships, and the glow of city lights coming alive. This city was full of life and luxury, and Desmond's family was among the most powerful and well-known in town. Desmond was preparing for his upcoming wedding to a popular socialite named Bianca. Bianca was known across the city for her beauty, fashion, and glamorous lifestyle. She loved attending high-class parties and wearing the finest designer dresses. For the past few months, Bianca had been eagerly planning their wedding. It was going to be a grand event at an elegant seaside hotel with hundreds of important guests. Desmond smiled when he thought of marrying her, but deep inside, he felt a small worry growing in his heart. One evening, Desmond and Bianca sat together in the mansion's spacious living room. The marble floor shone like glass, and tall windows revealed palm trees swaying in the evening breeze outside. Bianca flipped through a glossy wedding magazine, pointing out fancy flower arrangements and sparkling wedding gowns. Her eyes lit up as she imagined the celebration. "I want our wedding to be the talk of the city," Bianca said cheerfully. She held up a picture from the magazine of an enormous cake covered in golden decorations. "Everyone will remember how grand it is going to be." Desmond smiled and nodded politely. He admired Bianca's excitement, but he also noticed she talked more about the wedding's glamour than about their life together. Gently, he reached for her hand and said, "Bianca, as long as I have you, the wedding will be perfect for me." Bianca gave a quick, sweet smile and patted his hand, but almost immediately, her eyes drifted back to the magazine's pictures of jewelry and decorations. "Of course, darling, but we must have the best of everything. My wedding dress has to be the most stunning ever, and the cake should be taller than me." Her voice was bright and determined as she dreamt of the perfect day. Desmond chuckled softly, trying to share her joy. Yet, inside, he still felt uneasy. Bianca rarely talked about love or how happy they would be in marriage. She mostly talked about the luxury, the attention, and all the expensive details. He began to wonder if she truly loved him, the person, or if she was more interested in his wealth and the comfort it provided. His family, the Williams family, owned big companies and properties throughout Nigeria. Desmond grew up with servants, elegant cars, and vacations abroad. Bianca seemed to enjoy these privileges wholeheartedly. He hoped with all his heart that she loved him sincerely, not just the life he could give her. As night fell, the mansion's maid, a young woman named Grace, quietly entered the living room to serve evening tea. Grace was gentle and soft-spoken, with a warm smile that she tried to hide. She carefully placed the silver tea tray on the table between Desmond and Bianca. "Thank you, Grace," Desmond said with a nod, acknowledging her kindness. Grace nodded back respectfully and slipped out of the room as silently as she came. Bianca didn't even glance at the maid or say thank you. She was busy talking about a famous chef she wanted to hire for the wedding dinner. Later that night, Desmond lay in his large bed but found it hard to sleep. The cool ocean breeze floated through the curtains, bringing the faint sound of waves. He truly had everything a man could ask for: wealth, a beautiful fiancée, and a respected family name. Still, something felt missing. In his heart, he longed for true love, someone who would stand by him in good times and bad, someone who cared for him deeply and not just for his money. Desmond believed Bianca loved him, and he tried to push away his doubts, but her excitement over riches and status left a shadow of uncertainty in his mind. "Maybe I'm just nervous because the wedding is so close," Desmond whispered to himself in the quiet room. The wedding was only a few weeks away, and soon he would be Bianca's husband. He reminded himself that Bianca had often been sweet to him. She enjoyed having dinner with him and accompanying him to charity events, and she always smiled for the cameras by his side. Perhaps once they were married, all his worries would disappear, and she would prove her love in everyday life. With that hopeful thought, Desmond closed his eyes. He listened to the distant sound of the ocean waves until he finally drifted off to sleep, trying to silence the little voice of doubt in his heart. A week passed, and Desmond's uneasiness about Bianca's true feelings only grew stronger. Bianca remained busy with wedding preparations, spending hours talking about expensive decorations and sending out fancy invitation cards. Desmond tried to smile and go along with her plans, but the doubt in his heart nagged at him more each day. He realized that if Bianca didn't truly love him, marrying her could lead to a lifetime of sadness. He needed to know the truth about her feelings before the wedding. One late afternoon, Desmond made a difficult decision. He decided to test Bianca's love in a very serious way. He planned to stage an accident and pretend to be badly hurt. It was a drastic idea, but Desmond felt he had no other choice to truly find out if Bianca loved him for who he was and not just for his wealth. His heart pounded with fear and guilt as he arranged the details of his plan. He knew this plan could backfire, and he felt wrong to lie, but he couldn't think of any other way. "I must be sure," he told himself firmly. "I have to know if she will stand by me in the worst of times." The next morning, the sun rose bright and hot over Lagos. Desmond left home in his sleek black car, telling Bianca he had a business meeting in the city. As he drove along a coastal road lined with palm trees, he took a deep breath to steady himself for what he was about to do. On a quiet stretch of the road, according to the arrangement he made, Desmond deliberately swerved and bumped the car into a roadside barrier. The car's front hit the barrier with a loud bang, and the windshield cracked. Desmond had braced himself, but he now pretended to slump unconscious over the steering wheel. People nearby heard the crash and ran over, their voices filled with alarm. A man shouted, "Help! Call an ambulance!" Soon, an ambulance arrived with its siren wailing. Paramedics carefully pulled Desmond from the car. He was awake but groaned as if in great pain, keeping his legs completely still. They placed him on a stretcher gently, with concerned faces all around. Desmond's heart was racing, not from injury but from anxiety about his plan. He was rushed to the hospital, and news of the accident quickly reached his family and Bianca. Bianca arrived at the hospital in a rush, still wearing the elegant ivory dress she had put on that morning. Her face was pale with shock, and her eyes were wide and filled with tears. She found Desmond lying in a hospital bed, looking weak and dazed. The hospital doctor stood by his side, checking the monitors and medical charts. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the machines. "Desmond! Oh my goodness, are you okay?" Bianca cried as she hurried to his bedside. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she gently grabbed his hand, holding it in both of hers. Her voice was shaking. Desmond opened his eyes and gave a faint, tired smile. He spoke slowly, as if it was hard to get the words out. I'm okay now," he whispered, "just a little hurt." He tried to move as if to sit up, but suddenly he winced and let out a weak groan. My legs," Desmond whispered in a frightened tone. I can't feel my legs." At these words, Bianca gasped and covered her mouth with one hand. Fear struck her heart. What do you mean you can't feel your legs?" she asked, her voice trembling with panic. The doctor stepped forward, his expression serious. He gently explained to Bianca, "Desmond has suffered a spinal injury. Right now, he cannot move or feel his legs. We do not know yet if this is temporary or permanent. We'll need to run more tests and give it time, but he might be paralyzed from the waist down." Upon hearing this, Bianca burst into sobs. She sank into a chair beside the bed, her whole body shaking as she cried. This news was like a nightmare. In her mind, Bianca saw the future she had imagined. The grand wedding where they would dance, the luxurious honeymoon travels, the picture-perfect life. All of it now seemed to be crumbling. She squeezed Desmond's hand, trying to compose herself. "Don't worry," she managed to say, forcing a shaky smile through her tears. "I'm here for you. You will get better. You have to get better, Desmond." Desmond felt a lump in his throat as he watched Bianca cry. Seeing her so upset made him feel terrible. He hated lying to her and causing her pain. Deep inside, he almost wanted to abandon the plan and tell her it was all fake. But he reminded himself that this test was necessary to secure his future happiness. With guilty eyes, he squeezed Bianca's hand weakly. "I'm sorry, Bianca," he whispered, voice full of sorrow. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." In truth, those words had a double meaning that Bianca could never have guessed. Desmond stayed in the hospital for 2 more days under observation. Bianca visited him from morning till night, hardly leaving his side at first. On the first day, she was very attentive. She brought him fresh fruit juice and helped adjust his pillows. She sat by the bed holding his hand, offering encouraging words like, "You'll be up in no time, darling. The doctors will fix this." When lunch arrived, Bianca carefully fed Desmond spoonfuls of soup so he wouldn't strain himself. Desmond was touched to see her care for him this way, and he wondered hopefully if perhaps her love was genuine after all. However, he also noticed moments when Bianca's smile faded when she looked away. When she thought Desmond wasn't looking, her face fell into an anxious, distant stare. Once, Desmond woke up from a short nap and saw Bianca by the window, speaking quietly on her phone. "The doctors don't know? Yes, it's serious. No, I'm not sure about the wedding now," she heard her say softly. When she noticed he was awake, she quickly ended the call and came back to him with a bright smile. But Desmond had already heard enough to know that she was very troubled by his condition. On the 3rd day, the doctors agreed that Desmond could go home to continue his recovery. They provided a sturdy wheelchair and gave instructions to have plenty of rest and later start gentle therapy. Bianca helped gather his belongings and soon it was time to leave the hospital. Outside, the afternoon sun was blazing as Bianca gently pushed Desmond's wheelchair to the family's car. The driver, who worked for the family's car, opened the door. He carefully lifted Desmond from the wheelchair into the back seat. Bianca got into the car beside Desmond and thanked the driver quietly. She placed a hand on Desmond's arm, but this time she said very little. As the car traveled back to the mansion, Desmond looked out of the window at the bustling streets of Lagos. They passed by open-air markets where traders sold fruits and vegetables under colorful umbrellas. A group of children in school uniforms walked home, laughing and swinging their bags, and beyond them the blue ocean sparkled under the sun. Normally, Desmond would have pointed out these lively scenes to share the moment with Bianca, but now he was lost in his own worries. He was heading home appearing to be a man who might never walk again. He glanced at Bianca. She was staring straight ahead, her large sunglasses covering her eyes and her lips pressed tightly together. It was hard to tell what she was feeling. Is she already losing hope? Desmond wondered. Will she truly stand by me through this ordeal, or will she grow tired of me now that I'm like this? He knew that the hardest part of his test was only beginning. Back at the mansion, Desmond's life changed completely. The day after returning from the hospital, he woke up in his spacious bedroom and for a moment forgot about his pretend paralysis. He tried to swing his legs out of bed as he always did, but they remained still. He had to call out for help. A few minutes later, Grace knocked softly and entered the room. "Good morning, sir," Grace said in a kind voice. She had been instructed to assist Desmond with his daily needs. Grace was wearing a simple uniform and had tied her hair back neatly. She moved with a gentle calm. "Let me help you into the wheelchair," she offered. Desmond nodded gratefully, feeling a bit embarrassed that he needed help for something so simple. Grace carefully slipped her arms under his and helped him sit up. With patience and surprising strength for her small frame, she guided him from the bed into the wheelchair by the bedside. Desmond was relieved and thankful. "Thank you, Grace," he said softly. Grace gave a humble smile. "It's no problem at all, sir," she replied. That morning,
Bianca slept late and didn't come to check on Desmond until well past breakfast time. She finally walked into the bedroom wearing a stylish dress, looking as if she was ready to go out. She found Desmond already washed and dressed, sitting in his wheelchair by the window. Grace had helped him get ready for the day and was just finishing tidying up the room. Bianca forced a smile when she saw them. "Oh, you're up! I was just about to come and see you," she said, although it wasn't true. Desmond noticed she had her handbag with her. Grace quietly excused herself to give them privacy. As she left, Bianca stepped closer to Desmond. "How are you feeling this morning?" Bianca asked, her tone polite but a little distant. Desmond looked up at his fiancée. "I'm alright, just getting used to this," he said, gesturing at the wheelchair. He hoped Bianca might sit with him for a while. "Will you stay with me today? Maybe we could read or watch a movie together," he suggested gently. Bianca bit her lip and glanced at the door through which Grace had just exited. "Actually," she began softly, "my friends have planned a small gathering today. They want to cheer me up after all the stress." She paused, then continued in a light tone. "I was thinking I might step out for a few hours just to clear my head." Bianca spoke as if seeking his approval. Desmond felt a sting of disappointment. He had hoped she would spend the day by his side, but he tried to be understanding. "If you need to, I understand," he replied slowly. "Maybe you could come back soon? We could have dinner together at least." Bianca nodded quickly. "Yes, of course, I won't be long." She squeezed his shoulder before turning to leave. That evening, Bianca returned home much later than she had promised. Dinner time had passed and the sky was already dark. Desmond sat in the living room, a blanket over his legs, waiting quietly. Grace had brought him dinner on a tray and even kept him company by reading a novel aloud at his request. Her soft voice had been comforting in the lonely house. When Bianca finally walked in, she was laughing at something on her phone, but she stopped when she saw Desmond. "Oh, you're still up? I'm sorry I'm late," Bianca said quickly. She noticed the tray on the side table. "You ate already?" she asked. Desmond nodded. "Yes, I waited for you, but when you didn't come, Grace helped me with dinner," answering, trying to keep the sadness out of his voice. Bianca's face tightened for a moment. "I said I was sorry," she responded, sounding a little irritated that he mentioned it. Then she sighed and put on a sweeter tone. "It's just that my friends kept me longer than I expected. They were all so worried about us and wanted to help me relax." Desmond looked down and simply said, "It's okay. I'm glad you're back." He was hurt, but he tried not to show it. Over the next several days, a new pattern developed. Bianca often left the house to meet with friends or go shopping, saying she needed distractions to cope with the situation. When she was home, she would visit Desmond for a short while, but she grew uneasy with tasks like helping him move from the chair to the bed or assisting with his leg exercises. She would quickly call for Grace, saying, "Grace, come handle this please," even for small things. Bianca always had perfectly manicured nails and wore delicate outfits. It seemed she didn't want to risk messing them up with the hard work of caregiving. Grace, on the other hand, remained constantly by Desmond's side whenever he needed help. She brought him his medicine right on time, prepared simple meals she thought he would like, and wheeled him out to the garden in the morning so he could enjoy the fresh air. One sunny afternoon, Grace took him to the backyard garden filled with bright tropical flowers with a view of the sea beyond the fence. She set up a comfortable seat for him under a shade tree. As the ocean breeze brushed their faces, Grace asked softly, "Would you like me to read to you for a while, sir? Perhaps the newspaper or a novel?" Desmond smiled for the first time in days. "Maybe a novel. That would be nice," he said. Grace nodded and began to read from a storybook in a clear, gentle voice. Desmond closed his eyes and listened, feeling peaceful. In those moments, he forgot his worries and the test he was carrying out. Sometimes, Desmond would talk with Grace as she took care of him. He learned that Grace was the eldest of 4 siblings and worked as a maid to support her family. She spoke humbly of her life, mentioning that she had dreams of becoming a nurse one day because she enjoyed caring for people. "I had to leave school early to earn money, But I still study nursing textbooks at night when I can, she confided with a bashful smile. Desmond was impressed by her dedication and kind heart. Grace had her own hopes and struggles, yet she remained positive and gentle. Her presence had become a bright spot in Desmond's difficult days. Whenever Bianca came home and saw Desmond and Grace talking or even sharing a light laugh, she would frown with annoyance. One evening, Bianca walked into the living room to find Grace kneeling to put a blanket over Desmond's legs. They had been joking about a funny story Grace told, and Desmond was chuckling softly. Bianca's eyes narrowed at the sight. "Grace, that's fine. I'll take it from here," she said sharply. Grace jumped a little at the sudden voice. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, standing up at once. She gave a polite nod and quickly excused herself from the room. After Grace left, Bianca crossed her arms and looked at Desmond with a bothered expression. "She's just a maid, but lately she acts like your private nurse or something," she said, her voice edged with irritation. Desmond was taken aback by Bianca's harsh tone. "She's only trying to help and keep me company," he replied, defending Grace. "I don't think she means any harm. She's been very kind, Bianca." Bianca tossed her hair over her shoulder and let out a breath. "I know, I just feel so awkward, Desmond. All these medical things, I don't know how to handle them," she said, softening her voice. "It's good that Grace is here to do it, but it also makes me feel like I'm failing you as a fiancé." She looked down as if embarrassed. Desmond sighed and managed a small reassuring smile. "It's all right. I understand it's hard for you," he said quietly. He didn't want to argue. Deep down, however, he couldn't ignore how Bianca's attitude had changed. As the days went on, Desmond clearly saw the difference between Bianca's behavior and Grace's. Bianca's visits grew shorter and she was often distracted, while Grace's constant care grew more comforting and invaluable to him. Late nights, Desmond often lay awake thinking about the future that held. He wondered if Bianca truly meant her promise to stay with him in sickness and in health, as the wedding vows would say. Each time that thought came, it filled him with dread and loneliness. But then, he would recall Grace's kind smile and the way she said encouraging words when he felt down. In this dark time, the person who showed him genuine care and warmth was not his future bride, but the maid whom most people hardly noticed. This realization both saddened and comforted Desmond as he continued the charade of life in a wheelchair. As weeks went by, Bianca's behavior towards Desmond grew more distant and cold. She still came by the mansion, but her visits felt like quick obligations rather than loving time spent together. Desmond could sense her affection fading like a sunset disappearing into night. Whenever she spoke to him now, her once sweet voice was often tense or impatient. Gone were the days when she would hug him warmly or call him pet names. Instead, she mostly kept a formal tone, as if speaking to a neighbor or a distant relative. One afternoon, Desmond decided to try to bring back some warmth between them. He arranged for a cozy lunch in the garden, hoping the peaceful sea breeze and colorful flowers would make Bianca happy. With Grace's help, a small table was set under a shady palm tree and filled with Bianca's favorite foods. When Bianca arrived, she looked surprised to see the setup. Desmond smiled up at her from his wheelchair. "I thought we could eat outside together today," he said hopefully. Bianca sat down and forced a small grin. "How nice," she murmured, picking up her fork. At first, they ate in silence, except for the chirping of birds and the distant sound of waves. Desmond tried to start a cheerful conversation. He talked about a movie they once saw together and even cracked a gentle joke about how he nearly fell asleep during it. Bianca gave a polite laugh, but she didn't meet his eyes. She was busy scrolling on her phone with her free hand. "Is everything okay?" Desmond finally asked, trying to catch her attention. Bianca sighed and put down her phone. "I'm sorry. Yes, everything's fine. I was just checking messages," she said, sounding distracted. She barely touched the food on her plate. Desmond realized she was not really present in the moment. His heart sank. After a few more minutes, Bianca's phone rang. It was one of her friends. Without much hesitation, Bianca answered the call. She spoke brightly to her friend, discussing a new boutique opening in the city. Desmond quietly set his fork down. He watched as Bianca chatted and laughed as if she forgot he was right there. The lovely lunch he had hoped for was ruined by the invisible wall now between them. Grace, who was nearby watering some plants, looked at Desmond with sympathy in her eyes. That evening, Desmond was resting in his bedroom when he heard muffled voices down the hall. Curious, he wheeled himself slowly towards the sound. It was coming from the study. The door was slightly open. He recognized Bianca's voice and paused outside the door, not intending to eavesdrop, but unable to move away when he heard his name. "I feel so exhausted, Tasha," Bianca was saying. It sounded like she was on a phone call with her close friend. Bianca's voice was trembling, a mix of frustration and misery. "No, he's the same. He can't walk at all. The doctors don't know if he ever will. Yes, the wedding, I haven't set a new date. Honestly, I don't know what to do." Desmond held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest as he listened. Bianca continued, her tone growing bitter. "I didn't sign up for this. I love Desmond, you know I do, but this is so hard. I'm practically living like a nurse now and I'm not even married yet." She let out a humorless laugh. "Sometimes I feel trapped. All our dreams of traveling and dancing, everything's on hold. And what if it's forever? What if he never walks again?" Desmond's eyes burned with tears that he tried desperately to hold back. Every word Bianca spoke was like a dagger of truth cutting into him. "I haven't told him anything," Bianca went on. "I just keep smiling, but inside I'm losing my mind. Part of me is angry at him, Tasha. Isn't that awful? I know it's not his fault, but I can't help it. I'm angry that our life isn't what I thought it would be. Her voice choked up. "I even sometimes wish I could just escape it for a while." There was a pause as Bianca listened to her friend. Desmond could feel his hands trembling on the wheels of his chair. He shouldn't be hearing this, he thought, but it was too late. The truth was spilling out. Finally, he heard Bianca say in a quiet, defeated voice, "Maybe I am being selfish, but I'm scared. I don't want to spend the rest of my life like this. I still care about him, but love? I don't know anymore. Everything feels different now." Desmond could listen no more. A tear rolled down his cheek. He backed away from the study door as carefully as he could to avoid making noise, then turned and wheeled himself to his bedroom, his heart aching. He shut his door and let the tears fall freely. The silent cry that followed was one of the deepest pain he had ever felt. Bianca had basically admitted that her love for him was fading because of his condition. A gentle knock came on his door a little while later. Desmond quickly wiped his face. "Come in," he said, trying to steady his voice. Grace stepped inside, holding a cup of warm tea. "Sir, I made you some tea with ginger and honey. It might help you relax before bed," she said softly. She noticed his red eyes and sad expression. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked with sincere concern. Desmond forced a small smile. "Thank you, Grace," he replied, taking the cup. His hand still shook a little, and Grace quietly helped steady the cup so it didn't spill. "I'm all right," he lied unconvincingly. Grace didn't press him, but she stayed nearby in case he needed anything. That night, Desmond barely slept. Bianca's words echoed over and over in his mind. "I don't know if I love him the same. I feel trapped. I might want to escape." He realized that the test had given him the answer he dreaded. Bianca's love was indeed conditional, tied to him being healthy and able to give her the life of fun and ease she wanted. Now that he was paralyzed, her love was fading away. In his sorrow, he found one small light of comfort: Grace's kindness. Earlier, when she brought the tea and made sure he was all right, her eyes held genuine worry for him. Grace didn't know the full truth of his pain, but she cared nonetheless. Desmond thought about how Grace treated him these past weeks, with patience, respect, and gentle cheer, expecting nothing in return. As the morning birds began to sing, Desmond made up his mind about a few things. He would not continue to live in despair. He now knew the truth of Bianca's heart, and as painful as it was better than living in illusion. He also realized how much he valued Grace's selfless compassion. However, he told himself the test was not over just yet. He needed to be absolutely sure and then decide how to end this charade and take back control of his life. With that resolution, he finally closed his eyes, tears drying on his cheeks, and fell into a troubled sleep. The days that followed were some of the hardest for Desmond, but also showed him the brightest kindness from Grace. After overhearing Bianca's heartbreaking confession, Desmond fell into a quiet sadness. He spoke even less than before, and often spent long hours staring out at the ocean from his bedroom window. Bianca's visits became even rarer, and when she did come, Desmond found it hard to look her in the eye, knowing what he knew. He felt lonely, but he wasn't truly alone. Grace was there. One evening, Desmond's grief and stress took a toll on his body. He developed a fever. It started with him feeling weak and chilly. By nightfall, he was shivering under his blankets, sweat on his forehead. The household staff called the doctor, but it would take some time for the doctor to arrive. In the meantime, Grace took it upon herself to care for Desmond with full dedication. Grace brought cool water and a soft cloth. With gentle pats, she wiped Desmond's face and arms to bring down the fever. She placed a cold compress on his forehead and carefully adjusted his blankets. Desmond was trembling and a bit delirious from the high temperature. Through hazy vision, he saw Grace sitting by his bedside, replacing the cloth on his forehead every few minutes. Her face was focused and calm, but her eyes shone with worry. "You'll be all right, sir," she whispered reassuringly. "I'm here." At one point, Desmond moaned in discomfort, half awake. He felt a warm hand clasp his own. Grace was holding his hand firmly, yet gently. "It's okay, Mr. Desmond," she said softly. "Try to rest. I won't leave you." In his fevered dreams, Desmond heard that promise echo, "I won't leave you." It comforted him in a way he couldn't describe. Eventually, the doctor came and gave Desmond some medicine to reduce the fever. He advised that someone keep watch through the night in case the fever spiked again. Bianca was nowhere to be seen. She had gone home earlier, saying she was tired and would visit in the morning. So, Grace volunteered to stay by Desmond's side. All night, she sat in a chair next to his bed, making sure he was comfortable. Whenever Desmond stirred or groaned, Grace was there to adjust his pillows or offer a sip of water. Even in the late hours, when her eyes grew heavy, she refused to sleep properly. She only rested her head on the edge of the bed for a few minutes at a time, ready to wake up if he needed anything. By early morning, Desmond's fever broke. He opened his eyes to see the first light of dawn peeking through the curtains. His hand was still in Grace's, and she had fallen asleep sitting upright, her head bowed in exhaustion. Desmond felt deeply moved seeing her like this. Gently, he squeezed her hand to wake her. Grace jolted awake, instantly alert. "Oh, sir, you are awake. How are you feeling?" she asked with concern, immediately reaching to feel his forehead. "I'm all right," Desmond said quietly. His voice was weak but steady. "The fever's gone, I think." Grace gave a relieved smile. "Thank goodness," she said. She realized she was still holding his hand and let go, looking a little shy. "I'm sorry, sir," Grace apologized. "I must have dozed off. I hope I didn't bother you." Desmond shook his head slowly. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Grace," he said sincerely. "You have been nothing but wonderful." He paused, finding it hard to put his feelings into words. "You stayed with me all night. I can't thank you enough." His eyes glistened with gratitude. Grace stood up and straightened her apron, trying to hide a yawn. "It's my duty to take care of you, sir," she said, still modest. "I'm just glad you're feeling better. That's what matters." But Desmond frowned slightly. "No, Grace, this is far beyond duty," he said, shaking his head. "You've shown me more care and compassion than I ever expected. You treat me like a person who matters, not just a job." Grace looked down, her cheeks warming with embarrassment at the praise. "Sir, you do matter," she replied quietly. "I know you have been feeling sad. I just wanted to help in any way I could. You are a good person and you've always treated the staff with respect. We all care about you getting better." She spoke sincerely from her heart. Desmond felt something break loose inside him, an overwhelming appreciation and a gentle affection for this kind woman. In the soft morning light, Grace's face was full of earnest concern. He noticed for the first time how young she really was, likely close to his own age, and how a few strands of her hair fell loosely around her face after the long night. There was a simple, genuine beauty in her kindness that made Desmond's heart ache, but in a good way. Later that day, Bianca finally showed up, apologizing for not being there during the fever. She brought expensive tonics and vitamins, which she handed to Grace, saying, "Make sure he takes these." Bianca was polite to Desmond, but she seemed distracted as usual. Desmond thanked her, but he couldn't help noticing the stark contrast. Bianca's way of showing care was to buy things and then leave the actual caretaking to someone else, while Grace's way was to give her time, energy, and love. As Bianca left the room to take a phone call, Desmond looked over at Grace, who was organizing the medicines on his bedside table. "Grace," he said softly. She turned to him. "Yes, sir." Desmond hesitated, then spoke. "I just want you to know how grateful I am, not just for last night, but for everything. You've been by my side through all of this." Grace gave a small smile. "I'm happy to be here, sir. Helping you recover is the right thing to do." Desmond nodded. "I truly don't know what I would do without you," he added, his voice filled with honesty. These words made Grace's eyes widen slightly, and she looked away shyly. Caring for him came naturally to her, but she never expected praise or dependence from her employer. In the days that followed, Desmond regained his strength from the fever. Grace's devotion during his illness became the talk among some of the other household staff. How the maid never left Mr. Desmond. Desmond's respect and fondness for Grace grew deeply. Sometimes, when she was reading to him or chatting softly about her day, Desmond found himself smiling and feeling a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt in a long time. It was a feeling of being truly cared for, not out of obligation or for show, but out of genuine kindness. Desmond began to realize that while his world seemed to be falling apart with Bianca, another source of light had quietly entered his life through Grace. Her selflessness and genuine concern were like a balm to his wounded spirit. He hadn't fully thought about the future yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He wanted to see Grace happy, just as she worked so hard to make others happy. That desire alone told him how special she had become to him. Each day, as the coastal breeze flowed through the open windows and the scent of the sea lingered in the air, Desmond felt a little more hopeful. He still carried the pain of Bianca's fading love, but Grace's unwavering care gave him strength. In his heart, he silently promised himself that when all this was over, he would find a way to repay Grace for everything she had done, perhaps even be the cause of her happiness if he could. Despite Grace's tender care and Desmond's gratitude, under the surface there were still many unspoken pains. Desmond carried the heavy secret of his fake paralysis like a weight on his soul. Each day, he had to pretend to be unable to walk, enduring Bianca's coldness and seeing Grace worry about his condition. He felt guilty for deceiving Grace, who was innocent and kind. Sometimes, he wanted to tell her the truth, that he could stand up and walk anytime, that in fact, he was only testing Bianca's love. But he held back, fearing that Grace would think poorly of him for lying, or even worse, accidentally reveal the secret. While Desmond suffered in silence with his secret, Grace had her own quiet struggles. Bianca had grown increasingly irritated by how much attention Desmond was giving to Grace. One morning, after Grace finished helping Desmond with his breakfast, Bianca arrived at the mansion unexpectedly early. She walked into the dining room and found Desmond smiling faintly as Grace told him a cheerful story about her little brother. They looked up in surprise when Bianca entered. Bianca's eyes flashed with annoyance. "Grace, can I speak to you in the kitchen?" she said abruptly. Her tone was sweet in front of Desmond, but Grace sensed something was off. "Of course, ma'am," I replied softly. She gave Desmond a reassuring nod and followed Bianca out of the room. In the kitchen, away from Desmond's ears, Bianca dropped her pleasant facade. She turned to face Grace, crossing her arms tightly. "I think you are getting a bit too comfortable around my fiancé," Bianca said coldly. Grace blinked in confusion. "Mom, I'm only doing my job," she began, but Bianca cut her off. "Just your job? I see the way you hover around him, always holding his hand or whispering to him. Do you think you are some kind of angel because you stayed by his bedside? Don't forget you are just a maid." Her words were sharp and dripping with contempt. Grace felt her throat tighten. She had never seen Bianca this angry, and the words stung. "I'm truly sorry if it seems that way," Grace said in a low voice. "Mr. Desmond needed help, and I only wanted to assist. I have no other intentions, ma'am." Bianca stepped closer, her face hard. "Listen, you might have him and everyone else fooled with your sweet-natured act, but not me," she hissed. "I know girls like you. Maybe you're hoping if he can't rely on me, he'll choose you instead. Do you dream that the rich man will suddenly fall in love with the poor maid?" She let out a cruel little laugh. "What a fairy tale. Wake up, Grace. Men like Desmond don't marry girls like you. The moment he's back on his feet, if that ever happens, he'll be out and about in high society again. Where will you be? Still dusting shelves?" Tears pricked at the corners of Grace's eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of Bianca. "Ma'am, I have never thought of such things," she managed to say, her voice trembling. "I respect you and Mr. Desmond. I only want to do my duty and take care of him." Bianca narrowed her eyes, not believing a word. "Just stay away from him as much as your job allows. Do the basic work and nothing more. I don't need you acting like his nurse or his friend. Is that clear?" Grace nodded quickly, looking down at her feet. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. "Good," Bianca replied, straightening her elegant blouse. Without another glance, she left the kitchen, her high heels clicking on the marble floor. Grace stood there for a moment, alone in the quiet kitchen. The morning light coming in through the window fell on her face, showing the hurt in her eyes. She took a shaky breath and wiped the single tear that escaped down her cheek. She was determined not to cry openly or complain. She went back to her chores, swallowing the pain. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Desmond had sensed that something was wrong. Bianca had returned from the kitchen with a stiff smile and soon left the house saying she had errands. Grace came out a few minutes later to clear the dishes. Desmond noticed her eyes were slightly red, as if she'd been crying. His heart clenched. "Grace, is everything all right?" he asked gently. Grace forced a bright smile. "Yes, sir, everything's fine," she said quickly. She didn't meet his gaze and busied herself picking up the breakfast plates. Desmond knew she wasn't fine. He had known Grace long enough now to tell when she was hiding hurt. Did Bianca say something unkind to you?" Desmond ventured softly. He had his suspicions about Bianca's temper. Grace paused, her hands gripping the tray tightly. "Oh, no, sir. She just wanted to discuss some household matters." Grace lied, trying to protect the harmony of the home. "Please, don't worry." Desmond frowned. He could see the lie in her eyes. She was protecting Bianca, or perhaps protecting him from worry. This realization made him both sad and angry. He reached out and gently touched her arm to stop her from walking away. "Grace," he said gently, "you've been nothing but good to both of us. If someone has hurt you, you can tell me." At this, Grace couldn't hold her feelings any longer. A tiny sob escaped her lips before she could stop it. She quickly put down the tray back on the table and covered her mouth. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, tears welling up despite her efforts to remain composed. Desmond's eyes widened with concern. "You have nothing to be sorry for," he assured her. "Please sit down for a moment." He gestured to the chair next to him. With hesitation, Grace sat at the edge of the chair, wiping her eyes with the corner of her apron. Desmond spoke softly. "Did Bianca say something to upset you?" Grace looked torn, not wanting to badmouth her employer's fiancé. But Desmond's kindness and the weight of Bianca's cruel words broke her resolution. In a quiet voice, she replied, She thinks I'm overstepping, sir. She told me to keep my distance when caring for you." Desmond's jaw tightened. He could imagine the harsh way Bianca likely delivered that message. "What else did she say?" he asked gently. Grace shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks now. It doesn't matter, sir. I understand my place. I would never want to cause trouble between you two, she said, her voice trembling. I only wanted to help. If my help is unwanted, I will... No, Desmond interrupted firmly, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Your help is not unwanted, not by me. He took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger he felt towards Bianca at that moment. I'm so sorry if Bianca hurt you. You don't deserve that. Honestly, he hesitated, then went on. Honestly, it hurts me to see you treated that way. You're a good person. There was a silence as Desmond struggled internally. He knew now without a doubt that Bianca's heart was not kind like Grace's. The difference was as clear as day and night. Grace managed to smile a little through her tears. That means a lot to me, sir, she said softly. I'll be okay, sir. Don't worry about me. I just want you to be alright. Even after being bullied, Grace's main concern was still for Desmond's well-being. After Grace excused herself to continue her chores, Desmond sat in his wheelchair deep in thought. His hidden suffering was twofold: the pain of Bianca's betrayal and the guilt of deceiving Grace and others with his fake condition. Now, Bianca had gone as far as to hurt the one person who had been a ray of light in this dark time. He realized he could not let this continue much longer. That evening, Desmond made a quiet decision. He stared at the reflection of the moon on the ocean waters visible from the balcony. The night air was cool and salty. In his heart, he knew it was time to end the charade. Bianca had shown her true colors. She had failed the test of love. There was no point in dragging this false life out any further and allowing her to hurt the people he cared about. With resolve hardening inside him, Desmond began to plan his next move. If Bianca cared so much for appearances and grand events, then he would choose a grand moment to reveal the truth. No more hiding, no more pretending. He would expose everything in front of everyone important in their lives. It would be a moment Bianca would never forget. As he closed his eyes that night, Desmond felt sadness for what had been lost, but also a spark of hope for what might yet be saved, his own future and perhaps Grace's happiness too. The dawn of a new chapter was approaching, and Desmond was determined to face it with honesty and courage. In the following week, the distance between Desmond and Bianca turned into a chasm. They spoke less and less. Bianca often found excuses to stay away from the mansion, claiming she had meetings or needed to visit relatives out of town. When she did appear, she was polite but emotionally absent. She no longer tried to pretend that everything was all right. Desmond, on his part, stopped reaching out for her attention. He accepted her absence with a quiet sadness, focusing instead on gathering his strength and finalizing his plans. Desmond decided to host a grand gathering at the family estate, a party that would bring together family, friends, and important people from their social circle. Officially, he told everyone it was a gratitude party to thank those who had supported him during his accident and recovery. It was also meant to lift his own spirits after weeks of being cooped up. Bianca was surprised when she heard the idea. A party? Now? She asked one evening, raising an eyebrow. She stood in the lounge, dressed in an elegant blue gown, preparing to go out for yet another event without him. Desmond sat in his wheelchair by the fireplace. He looked up at her calmly. Yes, it's been a hard time for everyone, and I think a gathering at home would cheer us up. We can also make an official announcement about postponing the wedding until I recover, he said. Bianca pursed her lips. The wedding had quietly been put on hold since the accident, but they hadn't formally told all their acquaintances. A party would be an opportunity to address that. All right, she said with a small shrug. If you're sure you can handle a party in your condition, I can help arrange it. Inside, Bianca actually felt a spark of relief and excitement. She loved grand events, and if Desmond wanted to throw one, it meant she could dress up and enjoy an evening of socializing without feeling guilty. Perhaps, she thought, this was a sign he was coming to terms with reality and trying to make the best of it. Over the next few days, Preparations for the party went into full swing. Desmond's family mansion became a flurry of activity. Decorations were ordered, strings of lights to hang in the garden, elegant table settings for the outdoor patio, and fresh flowers to adorn every corner. Caterers were hired to prepare a lavish dinner. Musicians were booked to play soft live music in the background. Bianca took charge of many arrangements, which kept her busy and for once enthusiastic. She spent hours deciding on the menu and selecting her own outfit for the evening. She even visited Desmond more frequently, but only to discuss party details. Grace and the other house staff worked hard to get the home ready. Grace polished the silverware and oversaw the cleaning of the grand hall. She still did her usual duty of caring for Desmond, but since Bianca had warned her to keep distance, Grace tried to be a bit more reserved. Desmond noticed this change. Grace was still gentle and attentive, but she spoke less about personal things, perhaps afraid of overstepping. He felt a pang of regret, knowing Bianca's scolding caused Grace to withdraw slightly. To reassure her, he would sometimes whisper, "Thank you," or "I appreciate you," when Bianca wasn't around, just to make sure Grace knew he still valued her deeply. Grace would respond with a warm, shy smile each time, which gave Desmond comfort. As the date of the party drew closer, Desmond prepared himself mentally for what he was about to do. Late at night, he would sit alone in his room, going over the plan in his mind. He envisioned the moment, all eyes on him as he revealed that he could walk. His heart would start racing at the thought of it. He wasn't sure how people would react. There was some fear or anger from those he deceived, fear of hurting Bianca publicly, and even the unknown for the path that lay ahead after the truth came out. Yet, every time he remembered Bianca's cruel words and selfish behavior, or the tears in Grace's eyes that day in the kitchen, his resolve strengthened. This needed to happen. The truth had to come out, and he would face whatever consequences came with it. The night before the party, Desmond asked Grace to come to the study where he was practicing a speech. He sat at the large wooden desk lined with books. Grace entered quietly, a bit unsure. "You asked for me, sir," she said softly. Desmond smiled. "Yes, Grace, please have a seat." She sat down across from him, folding her hands in her lap. Desmond took a moment to gather his words. He wanted to tell Grace something important without revealing his secret prematurely. "Tomorrow is the big day," he said. Grace nodded. "Everything is nearly ready for the party. Don't worry, sir, we'll make sure it goes smoothly," she replied. Desmond looked at her kindly. "I know you will, but that's not exactly what I wanted to talk about," he paused, then continued. "Tomorrow I'll be making an announcement, a sort of speech. Things might get a little dramatic," he chuckled nervously, and Grace tilted her head in curiosity. "Dramatic, sir?" she echoed. Well, Desmond chose his words carefully. "Let's just say I plan to address everyone about what has been going on with me. I want you to know ahead of time that whatever happens, I am grateful to you. You might hear some surprising things, but please remember that I value your support more than I can express." He looked straight into her eyes as he said this. Grace looked a little confused, but she saw the seriousness in his face. She thought perhaps he would announce something about his health or about the wedding. "Sir, I'm sure whatever you say will be right," she responded gently. "And I'll be there. I'll be helping serve guests, so I will hear your speech." Desmond felt relieved that Grace would be present. He almost wanted to tell her, "Watch closely, I have a surprise," but he bit his tongue. He simply nodded. "That's all, Grace. Thank you. You should get some rest now before the big day." Grace stood up to leave, but before she exited, she said quietly, "Good night, Mr. Desmond, and good luck tomorrow." "Good night, Grace," he replied warmly. The next day arrived quickly. As the sun began to set, guests started to arrive at the mansion, their cars rolling in through the gates. The coastal sky was painted with streaks of purple and red as dusk approached. The garden was transformed into a magical venue with twinkling fairy lights and candles in glass lanterns. Soft music drifted through the air. Well-dressed men and women mingled, chatting and laughing, holding glasses of champagne and sparkling juice. Desmond was in his room getting ready. He wore a tailored suit, the same one he had planned to wear at his wedding reception, now repurposed for this evening. He sat in his wheelchair, looking at himself in the mirror. For a second, he felt a twist of anxiety in his stomach. This was it. The moment of truth was almost here. Bianca entered the room, radiant in a long emerald green gown that hugged her figure. She truly looked like a socialite princess. "Are you ready?" she asked with a bright smile, seeming in a genuinely good mood for once. The anticipation of the party had put her in high spirits. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied with a small smile of his own. Bianca noticed her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at him in the wheelchair, but she quickly masked it and stepped behind him. "I will wheel you out. Everyone is waiting to see you," she said. Desmond allowed Bianca to push his wheelchair down the grand hallway towards the garden. His heart thudded in his chest. Along the way, they passed Grace, who was carrying a tray of appetizers towards the guests. She was dressed in a neat uniform, different from her usual daily attire, still a maid's attire but crisp and formal for the event. She gave Desmond an encouraging nod as he went by, and he felt a surge of courage. The garden was filled with about 100 people, family members, friends from the business world, and acquaintances from high society. As Bianca pushed Desmond into view, a hush gradually fell on the crowd, followed by polite smiles and nods. Many were seeing him for the first time since the accident. Desmond could hear whispers, "Poor man, still in a wheelchair, and at least he's looking well." Bianca gently parked his wheelchair near a small raised platform at the front of the gathering. She then stepped aside to mingle with the front row of guests, leaving Desmond at the center. This was his moment. Taking a deep breath, Desmond looked around at all the faces, the concerned, curious, expectant faces of people he knew. He saw his father and mother standing together near the front, their expressions supportive. He saw Bianca's parents too, looking on uncertainly. He caught sight of Grace standing off to the side with other staff, her eyes fixed on him with loyalty and concern. The music softened and quieted as one of the event organizers tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice came. "Thank you for being here tonight. As you all know, this gathering is to celebrate the recovery and return of our dear Desmond Williams and to hear a few words he would like to share. Please welcome him." There was gentle applause. Desmond's palms were sweating, but he steadied himself. This was it, the culmination of his test and all the weeks of turmoil. Summoning all his strength and calm he had, Desmond reached for the microphone stand in front of him. His speech and his big revelation were about to begin. With the microphone in hand and the eyes of the crowd upon him, Desmond felt strangely calm. The gentle night breeze ruffled the leaves and carried the subtle scent of ocean air into the garden. He cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice amplified clearly for all to hear. "Good evening, everyone," Desmond said, scanning the faces of the guests gathered. "Thank you for coming here tonight. Seeing all of you, family, friends, colleagues, means a great deal to me. As you know, the past weeks have been very challenging. I was in an accident and, as you can see, I've been using a wheelchair since." A sympathetic murmur passed through the guests. Bianca stood to one side, a polite smile fixed on her face as she watched him, perhaps expecting a simple thank you speech. Desmond continued, "Throughout this time, I've had a lot of time to think about life, about love, and about what truly matters." He paused, his heart pounding at what he was about to confess. "Tonight, I want to share the truth about my situation. It's a truth that not even my closest family or my fiancé know." Now the crowd fell into a complete, tense silence. Bianca's smile faltered slightly, a look of uncertainty flickering across her face. Grace, standing among the staff at the side, held a tray and forgot to breathe for a moment, her full attention on Desmond's words. Desmond gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. He said slowly, "The truth is, my paralysis was never real." A collective gasp arose from the guests. A few people exchanged bewildered glances, and a low wave of whispering swept through the crowd. Bianca's eyes widened in shock, her face turning pale, and she looked as if she didn't understand what she had just heard. Desmond spoke louder, steadying his voice. I have been able to walk all this time. The accident did happen, but my injuries were not as severe as we led everyone to believe. I was never truly paralyzed. As he said this, he removed the blanket that was draped over his legs, and with visible effort, he pushed himself up from the wheelchair. There were audible cries of surprise. Bianca took a step forward, confusion and anger contorting her expression. Grace nearly dropped her tray, covering her mouth with one hand, eyes wide in disbelief and amazement. Desmond stood upright on his 2 feet. For a moment, he simply stood there looking at the stunned crowd. Then he took a small step forward and another, turning to face everyone without the wheelchair. Gasps turned into applause from some corners of the audience, thinking perhaps it was a miraculous recovery. Desmond raised a hand gently to quell the reactions. Please, let me explain, he said. The clapping died down, but the tension was thick in the air. Bianca's face flushed red, whether from embarrassment, confusion, or rage, Desmond could not tell yet. He continued, voice clear and earnest. I know this is a shock. You're probably wondering why I would do something like this. The truth is, I had doubts. Doubts about whether I was loved for who I am or for what I have. His eyes found Bianca in the crowd. She was staring at him, eyes blazing, one hand clutched to her chest. Desmond addressed the crowd, but his words were meant for her. I did something drastic and foolish. I pretended to lose the use of my legs to test the loyalty and love of someone very dear to me. I needed to see what was real in my life. A few people in the crowd glanced subtly at Bianca now, realizing what he meant. Bianca suddenly broke from her frozen state and rushed to Desmond's side. Desmond, what are you saying? She stammered. You lied to me? To everyone? There was panic and fury in her voice. Desmond looked at her with a mix of sorrow and resolve. Into the microphone, he answered her, Yes, Bianca, I lied, and I'm deeply sorry to all of you who are hearing this. I won't blame anyone who's angry with me. It was a very extreme thing to do. He took a breath and then spoke directly to Bianca, though everyone could hear. Bianca, I'm sorry for deceiving you, but I had to know for sure whether you truly loved me in hardship as well as in happiness. Bianca's face went through a storm of emotions. She glanced around and saw dozens of eyes on her. Tears of humiliation appeared in her eyes. How could you, she whispered, her voice shaking, how could you do this to me? There was a tremor in Desmond's voice now, but he pressed on. These weeks, I watched how you reacted, how you cared for me when you thought I was permanently injured. And then he gestured gently toward the side where Grace stood, and I watched how others cared as well. Some showed true selfless compassion, others drifted away. Bianca understood the implication. She trembled with anger and hot pride. So, it was all a trick? A test? She asked bitterly, not into the microphone, but directly to him. The microphone still picked up her words and they echoed softly through the speaker, audible to those nearest. A few guests murmured in astonishment at the unfolding drama. Desmond nodded slightly. Yes, a test of love, I suppose. He sighed, and his tone became sympathetic but firm. And Bianca, I'm afraid you did not pass that test. A louder gasp rippled through the crowd. Bianca looked as if he had slapped her. What are you saying? She cried, her voice rising. The facade of the elegant, composed socialite was crumbling in front of everyone. Desmond lowered the microphone, not wanting to broadcast every word of this directly, but many still overheard. I think you know what I mean, he said softly. When you thought I couldn't walk, I saw you slowly pull away from me. You were no longer by my side in the way I expected my future wife to be. You left me alone on many days, and I heard the things you said about feeling trapped, about not wanting this life. Bianca's eyes widened, realizing he must have overheard her private complaints. She opened her mouth. I was upset. I didn't mean everything, she tried to say, voice choked. Desmond shook his head sadly. Maybe you didn't mean to hurt me, but the truth is you did, and I'm sure I've hurt you now with this deception, and for that I am sorry. He then raised his voice a little, addressing everyone once more. Tonight I am ending this charade. I will also be ending my engagement to Bianca. Now Bianca gasped loudly, and a wave of shocked chatter broke out among the guests. Bianca's father stepped forward with a stern look, and her mother put her hand to her chest in dismay. Desmond's own parents exchanged concerned glances, but stayed where they were, allowing him to speak for himself. Bianca's face went white. Desmond, you can't just... She looked around frantically, aware of all the eyes and ears. She lowered her voice and hissed, "Do this here, in front of everyone?" Desmond felt a pang of pity for her, but he remained firm. "I have to, Bianca. This is where the truth must come out. Our relationship has been built on fragile ground. I cannot marry someone who would not truly stick with me through life's challenges, and you should not marry someone who could deceive you like I did." Tears spilled from Bianca's eyes now, streaking her mascara. She looked devastated and furious all at once. Without another word, she turned and fled from the immediate area, pushing past a few astonished guests. Her closest friend Tasha quickly followed to comfort her, and her parents hurried after her as well. A tense silence hung in the air as they disappeared into the house. Desmond stood there on the platform, feeling a mix of relief, remorse, and nervousness. He turned back to the crowd, lifting the microphone again. "I know this is highly unusual," he said with a sad smile. "I apologize to all of you for witnessing that drama. Perhaps I deserve any anger you may feel, but I could not in good conscience carry on with a wedding without certainty in my heart."